Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our first episode of On Point with Irep or Irep On Point. Irep stands for Islamic Research into Exotic Phenomenon. We'll be doing loads of spaces over the past couple of months on Twitter, which have been relatively successful, and we've had, you know, the privilege, if you like, of discussing this with many people from many different backgrounds. So what we thought we'd do is take the discussion onto YouTube where we can sort of, I guess, make it a bit more personal because there'll be faces involved now, not just voices.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of objective here. So we've got Farouk that's joining us today. Farouk McDermott, obviously founder of Irep. We have Khalid, who is a core member of the Irep team, a lead researcher and contributor in many other ways. Probably have some other of the internal team joining us soon as well, hopefully. Maybe Afaq's going to join us too. But we want you guys to join us too. So shortly I'll be sharing a link with you that you can click on and you could jump onto this stream and ask us questions or discuss things with us, or, you know, even challenge Farouk, because you did put out a challenge a few days ago. Come and challenge me. He didn't say me. He didn't say me. He meant like, let's discuss it. Let's have a discussion. Let's have a productive discussion, not an unnecessary debate. But yeah, that's what this is here for. Let's have that discussion. And bro, I think it's important to be quite forward, especially considering what's going on currently in the, UFO phenomenon sphere, because things are becoming quite evident now, bro. The link to the occult, the link to the paranormal, the link to the supernatural is becoming more and more evident as time goes by, and that connection to the phenomenon being linked to extraterrestrials is dying by the day. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. I mean, we've been mentioning this, talking about this for a while. But these are the sort of things we'll touch upon. Today is our first episode, so we're going to be discussing a couple of current trending topics and events, which I'll pass over to Farouk, I guess, and he can introduce it, and then we could go from there. How are you doing, Farouk? Assalamu alaikum, bro.
Yeah, you know what? Alhamdulillah, I've got to say, all praise is due to God. Some people don't like that. In this topic, man, it's a taboo subject, bringing religion into it, and for religious folk having a voice. And I'd say it's even more controversial to add Islam to the mix, which is what we're doing. But I think having these open discussions, inviting people on to come and talk, hash things out, it's just going to help us get to grip with the situation. It is a global phenomena. It's something that is affecting every country that has satellites, that has military hardware, knows that these things exist. There seems to be some sort of coherence of an approach, whether that's from each country. So I'd say Russia, Iran, these are two big players right now in the world. Israel, America, Britain, Europe, Australia, all of the major players in global geopolitics, China, Japan, all of them seem to have the same sort of approach to this topic, which is, I'd say China may be a little bit more open over the last few months in that they've admitted that they have a recovery crash retrieval program. Japan too, and a few other countries have whistleblowers, like America, for example, that have whistleblown on the existence of the reverse engineering program. George Knapp did fantastic work on exposing the exact same programs that operate in Russia. And this goes back, this is historical. So all of the countries seemingly have a very similar approach to it, in that they don't talk about it. They're not being forthcoming and open with the reality of these programs, or should I say with the reality of existence of this non-human intelligence. And this is why having everybody get together and discuss it, talk about it, get our eyes and ears on what information we have, what information you have, and bring it together so that we can have a what's the right word, brother? An enriched understanding of the topic, and have a much more nuanced approach to how we collect our data. So whether it's from religious books or doctrine, whether it's from historical books and information, and then we collate that with what we're collecting today, what's been whistleblowed on, what some of the pilots and that have described seeing, what abductees have described happening to them, and we look at that across the board to get a better understanding. And I think what we want to do here with IREP, yeah, of course, like tongue in cheek, come on, challenge us, discuss things, but it's more to a sharpen the proverbial sword, meaning sharpen all of our wits and knowledge on this topic so that we can't be duped again. We don't want this to be another have the wool pulled over our eyes. It's also to enlighten the rest of us. Like all of us together need to be enlightened about the reality of existence, and whether people like it or not, this entails understanding the origin of mankind. So this topic directly is involved in that, because once you see that there's something can live right beside you, kind of like, as we always say, brother, the microbial world, it's right beside us. In fact, it's on the tip of your nose. You can't see it. That something else can live symbiotically with mankind in a similar way where we can't see them or interact with them. And this has a direct influence on mankind individually, so consciously for ourselves, how they affect us individually, as well as how they've affected the journey and story of mankind. And that's why having these open discussions, trying to get everybody involved, we want all religions to come on and discuss this with us, to share their findings, to share their understanding, so that we can have kind of like a king of the hill type approach to it, that which theory and which understanding seemingly suits the phenomena best. And by going through recent data, like today, we're going to look at the video of Burlington. We're going to react to it, God willing. And then by looking at these, the modern cases that are going on, cross-referencing it with the historical stories that we have from all religions and all backgrounds, and then trying to tie them into as to an understanding of what this thing is. Once we know what it is, we kind of can then gauge what it's doing to these people on the inside, because it's affecting them psychologically. We have Michael P. Masters openly admitting that it absolutely rocked his world, like in a negative way. And he had a really bad psychological reaction initially to the revelation that something else existed, and it affected him. And it took him days of, a depression and sort of sadness that overtook him. And it kind of also changes, the reality of science, what it actually functions as. Is it really something that's an endeavor to discover new things around the world, or is it a control mechanism whereby they're actually hiding discoveries from the rest of us? So there's a lot of questions that arise from study of this topic, and I think that using these platforms, having us join in, I think isn't a bad thing. And I again, I can't stress enough, we want other people to be involved as well. We want anyone to come on. You can join when you share the link, Imran. Anyone can join, come talk to us, tell us we're wrong. We don't mind. We just want to hear everybody's side of the story, if you like. So
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro. I've shared the link for everyone. So anyone that does want to join live on the stream, you guys can click on the link and I can add you to the studio. That's something for everyone to pick up on. Tariq's joined us as well. Hope you're well, Tariq. And also, Salam Tariq, how are you, bro?
Walaikum salam. How are you, brothers?
Very good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
I'm
Beautiful.
surprised we
yeah.
got him away from the dinner table, mate. You know what I mean? With that lovely food he's got there, bro. Allahu
Yeah,
Akbar.
mashallah. No, we had dull burgers today, unfortunately. Yeah.
Dude, that sounds great.
How is everyone? Everyone good?
Very good, bro.
Mashallah. Yeah, I hope we have a successful premiere show on YouTube, and we have a superb audience join us. We're looking forward to some interesting discussions. So Allah bless the discussion and keep us all sincere, inshallah.
Ameen.
So before we move on, guys, to the video, Khalid, I just want to get your sort of take on
Yeah.
what's currently been going on, because I know you've recently really gotten involved in this type in the topic, because you were focusing on some related topics previously, but you've really just really taken interest in this area. What's been your current conclusions and thoughts, if you'd like to share that with us?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So my take on this would be that what I see on ground, the common understanding of people is mostly those people who are involved in this, they think that this is a challenge to religions and their theology. They might think that religions cannot factor such realities within. Some of them who adhere to such realities, they take it as a challenge. And whereas speaking to you and speaking to Brother Farooq, which has been shift in my consciousness since the past year or so, where I get to see this in a completely different perspective, where there are many mysteries involved, but I think religion is the missing piece there, which actually, when you place that in, then you start seeing things more clearly. So this is what my take has been. I think the more I actually incorporate religion into these topics, the more clarity I get. Yeah, so that's what I have to say in a nutshell.
That's brilliant, bro. And absolutely, it is a fascinating topic. And I think one of our main objectives, and I think there's a couple of things, bro, Farouk and everyone else, I think we should really outline in this first episode before we really get, hit the ground running and get into the discussion and break down the video, is number one, that what our objective of doing this is. Be very open and honest about this. And secondly, what our foundational position is. Now, it's important to be as transparent as we can. Yes, we want to, and absolutely want to discuss this, and we want to open this up, and we want people to come and challenge our perspectives and our theories and our ideas. And we're also genuinely here to learn from everyone else as well. And also, we're here to genuinely work with everyone else too. But everyone has to have a position. I mean, no one can go into a subject without a position. That in itself is absurd. So everyone must begin with a position. We too, as IREP, have a position, which we're not shy to share, or we're not trying to hide, and trying to disguise and trying to, whatever the case is. So we will definitely want to highlight those two things, bro, before we get, dive deep into this whole thing. And so addressing the first part, or the first question I was touching upon, what was my first question? What was the first thing I mentioned? Lost my train of thought. Does anyone remember?
No, I think you said that we need to tell people the purpose of what we're doing here, and that entails us explaining our position, where we're coming from with this. So what is our take on this, so that people have something to challenge, I suppose, or to disagree with.
Yeah, absolutely. So does anyone want to take that sort of and summarize it?
In summary, and you can jump in as well, Imran, Khalid, Tariq, whoever wants to jump in. Our perspective on this is that it is quite, what's the right word? It encompasses many aspects. The UFO phenomena is a modern day version of something that's happened many, many times before. But really, the story starts before mankind was ever on planet Earth. To try to keep it succinct as possible, the initiation of all information, of all knowledge, of all creation is God, who we call Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah, the perfect, the most high, he is the originator of all things. Nothing exists without him. The atoms, the molecules that they're constituted, as well as the microbiology and each layer of creation that we know of, the quantum world, the heavens and earth, so all of the planets across this universe, is just one part of the creation of God. Within that creation, he's created life, and Allah created us. He created the animals, he created the trees, the sea, and there are multiple facets to this creation. So they have needs and requirements, they have life and death, they procreate, right? So in a nutshell, everything starts with the origin of knowledge, which is Allah. Everything that we know is because of the knowledge Allah has given us. Preceding our creation, according to our belief, according to our Quran, according to what God revealed to mankind in the last revelation. And this is important to say that, akhis, brothers and sisters. The reason why it's important to mention that it's the last revelation is because it is the most pertinent to the story of ufology. In that, if it truly is a book from God, there has to be an in-depth explanation as to these phenomena, particularly when they're related to the most advanced laboratories and think tanks, military intelligence, and so on and so forth, with the most powerful technology that we can possibly, comprehend or conceive. Then there must be in any revelation worth its salt some in-depth analysis or explanation as to what's going on here, because it is the most important, most secretive topic on planet Earth, right? And it affects mankind deeply because decisions are being made for us and our future as a species by these people in these programs. So from our perspective, Allah, he created another creature called the Jinn. They live in another dimension of this planet Earth. So they live on Earth like we do, but they live in another dimension. They live in a place, and it basically describes it. They live in a place where you cannot see them. So the tribe of the Jinn, as they're called, a tribe, they live in a place which you can't see them, but they can see you. So immediately from this perspective, we are at a disadvantage to them. They can see our existence. They know what we do. We can't see their existence. We don't know what they do. They can see our buildings. They can see our lifestyle. They can see our families. They can travel around and see humanity and fly around the earth in ways that we don't fully comprehend. While we cannot see them, we cannot see their lives, we cannot see their buildings, we cannot see their families, their jobs, and the things that they do. Right. So first and foremost, God created them before us, and He put them in a on this earth in a place where they can see us, but we can't see them. So this is very important. Foundational aspect is that we are the ones at the disadvantage here, which to a certain extent it plays a good part in explaining why being a human is very special. As a human being, we are at a disadvantage. While at that disadvantage, if we can rise above and go against the grain, so to speak, and avoid the influence of these creatures when we are at this disadvantage, this entails a great reward from God. And this is all this is a test for us. Anyway, am I being too in depth, Akhi?
No, this is good, bro. But maybe you want to bring it to the point where, okay, what is the direct link with this phenomenon? Now, obviously, you're speaking about the Jinn, which is very important, and what you're discussing is those foundational concepts from an Islamic perspective, building out the narrative and the story and giving a bit of a background, which is important, bro. So give whatever you think is necessary.
I think as a foundation, we have to understand that they precede us on this earth, so they're older than us. They have been doing what we're doing, trying to understand this earth for a lot longer than we have. Number two, they see different layers than we do. That Allah, God, gave them capabilities that He didn't give us in their actual makeup. So they're made from a smokeless fire, as is described in the Quran, or a scorching fire, or just to simplify it, they're made from a plasma. They're made from a different type of material. This material gives them some advantages that we don't have. One being that they're able to manipulate and give different constitutions to their creation. As an example, they shapeshift. They can come in the form of animals, they can come in the form of human beings, or come in the form of something in between, like a hybrid, right? As is described in the hadith, in the prophetic traditions revealed to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet. So it's important to keep calling back, because what is in essence, what this whole thing is us as human beings and the Jinn as Jinn kind living on this earth together. They are tested with not taking advantage and abusing their position over us, and we are tested by not falling into the abuse and following the ways of the evil ones from the Jinn. What does that mean? Hopefully I'll get this right, because I've given the foundation now. We and them are both share this planet. They see us, we don't see them. They are tested in a way as to not abuse the power and the advantage that God has given over them. And we have been given a position on this planet to maintain and look after this planet without falling into the abuses of power through the influence of these creatures. That clear?
Yeah, absolutely, bro. It really, because curse of knowledge, we need to explain these things in very simple terms. So because there'll be people that haven't come across this information. Yeah. About, okay, so they're referring to the Jinn. What are the Jinn? So this is a very important topic, essentially, to start with, and you're describing exactly that. Khalid, whenever you feel, bro, just jump in as well.
Jump in
and add anything you feel relevant about the Jinn, because it's important to build about that concept of what the Jinn are. What are we referring to when we say the word Jinn itself?
So I think there's one thing also very important to note is my area of research is more related to cognitive science, which is where, I mean, what we're talking about jinn as in a concept for being, which is a spirit being or this sort, is not something that is specially what Islam is making a radical claim. We've never seen this claim. If we actually look back with the anthropological literature, or if we just look into human history, almost every culture believed in something along these lines like this. In fact, there are some cognitive scientists like Justin Barrett who mentioned something like it is very common for people to believe in this, and it is very uncommon for someone to not believe in this. And he says that we live in this time which is very strange. He says something along those lines where it is very uncommon to deny their existence. So he says you have a problem into the whole entire history of humankind where you think that they don't exist, because the whole entire history of humankind has always believed in something like this. So I think this is important to show that what we are talking about, the jinn, is not something that is something very obscure and no one knows what it is. We just have a particular take on it, and that is what we inshallah flesh out.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so essentially what we're getting at, guys, is that the jinn, when we say the jinn, these are beings that are not human, but they are a different form of creation created from a different substance, a different foundational substance. And in the Quran, it's referred to as a smokeless fire. Now, there's not much more detail given in regards to that, but we can obviously speculate, and we do, but we will outline when we are speculating, that we are actually speculating so people know. So that's important to keep in mind. But they are a different, they're a different species, a different creation made of a different substance, and they live alongside us, but possibly in a different dimension. They were created before us. They occupied this planet in whichever way, whether that's dimensionally or literally, before we were sent down, or before Adam was sent down to this planet itself. And there's a whole history to this. So there, and Farouk's been touching upon some of this as well. And maybe you want to touch more upon this point as well, bro, because I think this is more of an ontological point, bro. That initial dynamic between Adam and Iblis, as we call him, you can say one of the leaders of the jinn, now the evil jinn.
Yeah.
What was that dynamic? That hatred, that enmity that began then, because that plays a role even in the dynamic that's taking place today between the phenomenon and human beings.
It's going to sound very petty, unfortunately, and a lot of people aren't going to really comprehend the significance of it because it's so ridiculous. But what essentially happened was, you have an intelligent. There are two intelligent beings that God created that He gave free choice to. It was mankind and jinn kind. When He created us both, He gave His creation the option, and we and jinn kind decided to have this free choice. And they were created before us and were favored over us. They are, as you can imagine, they're a completely different creation. They can shapeshift, they can fly, they can travel through different, to use, as you said, it's speculation to use the word dimension, but they're not restricted in the ways that we are. They can travel through different layers of this existence than we can. We have instrumentation that can look in the bloodstream and things like that, but they can actually travel through the bloodstream. How exactly, in what way? Is it to do with blood plasma or something like? I don't know, right? But going back to it, the origin of this whole us versus them type thing is when Adam was created, we were given special dispensation over the rest of mankind, over the rest of God's creation, in that He placed us on this aspect of existence. We don't live where the jinn live, although we live on planet Earth. They live in a different place, as Allah describes it, a makan, a different place. So we seem to have been favored in the place we were given. We have access to the fruits. We have access to the trees, the flowers, the beauties of this planet. And we have been given a position described by God as a vicegerent. A vicegerent being a successive, responsible leadership over this earth. We can kill any creature that lives on this planet, and we can save any creature on this planet. We can destroy this planet, or we can maintain and look after this planet. So we have been given a great responsibility and a noble position as the leaders of the earth. And this disgruntled one of the jinn, who existed when Adam was created. And he became angry because he said, essentially, he's saying, I'm more capable for the job. I can change. I'm stronger than him. I'm faster than him. I can move around. I can do things better than he can. And I'm a great worshiper of you, God. So why have you given this to him when I'm more suited to the task? I am better than him. It was arrogance. It was racism that led to this situation where it's us versus them. Adam, when he was created, the first thing he was very naive. He didn't know much, and he was taken advantage of and misguided. And this was an evidence for the jinn. He said, look how easy it is for me to manipulate. I'm going to do this to him and his children. I'm going to manipulate them. I'm going to misguide them, and I'm going to call them away from your path, the way of righteousness. And essentially, just to give you a good analogy, in video games these days, they have a lot of achievements you can get. And, you know, the more difficult it is, the greater your achievement will be. And that is what Islam gives us. It gives us these achievements you have to do, like swearing. The other day we was on a live stream, right? And a young lady came in and she used a couple of swear words. And, you know, I just mentioned to her, I'm really sorry. We try not to use bad words while we're on the stream here because of the respect. But in reality, controlling your tongue, even with, you know, swear words, isn't super easy. But if you can do it, it's an achievement, right? If you can control yourself to the point where you don't really swear and you keep control of your tongue and you're aware of what you're saying, so you don't use these words, Allah has promised a reward for that. So that's why we do it. It's just an achievement. Some people say, well, what's it matter if you swear? Yeah, but if you're able to control yourself, you will get an achievement at the end of it, right? So God gave Adam and his children these achievements to do. If you can do this, if you can stay on the straight path, worship none but me, follow the laws that I send you through the books that's going to be revealed to mankind, and listen to the prophets that I send to you to give you advice and guidance, you will have Adam. You will have the Garden of Eden. You will have Jannah. You will have paradise. And paradise is huge. And Allah placed in all of us this natural feeling of something more. That's why a lot of people you meet, they say, I feel like there's more to my life than just this. I'm not satisfied. That's because we have in our hearts this natural disposition of understanding that there's more to existence than this. And that is almost like an underlying, what's the right word? A motivation for us to work hard and to fulfill these achievements, right? So just to recap, yeah, this second part of the explanation. The jinn kind are disgruntled that we have all the cool stuff. We get to eat all the nice foods. And when you hear what they eat, it doesn't sound very desirable. Okay. The place where they live, they don't have the same food that we have. Yeah. Secondly, that we were favored by being placed as leaders over the planet Earth while they are not. Early human beings, the jinn used to run afraid of them. Now it's the other way around. When you go to a scary, spooky area, human beings are running. But in our early history, according to prophetic tradition, they used to be afraid of mankind. So they used to run from us, and whenever the humans would come, they would be afraid of us. But over time, this has done a 180. You know, now it's us afraid of them. Going forward through now, why is it important? And why is it identifying the jinn is probably the most important thing to do with regard to the study of ufology? It's because you get a picture of what they're trying to do and how they're manipulating us and the purpose for which they're manipulating us. So first and foremost, I think we need to identify what evidences we have that this UFO phenomena is the jinn. Yeah. So I will just go through without citing all the sources because we'll be here all day, but the jinn are mentioned in the Quran as that which flies. So they fly around. And it's mentioned in the hadith, the prophetic tradition. So the jinn fly and UFOs fly. The jinn abduct people. UFOs abduct people. The jinn are interdimensional, meaning they can travel to different areas in an instant. And the UFOs travel to different places in an instant. The jinn can travel very fast, instantaneously. UFOs travel instantaneously. The jinn affect our psychology and they can speak to us psychically. UFOs The pilots of them have been described as using psychic discussion or psychic communication. The UFO Jinn have been described as builders, and they were used by Solomon, King Solomon, to build some fantastic buildings in his time. And the Jinn, the UFO, are adept builders. They're building things and technologies and crafts from materials we can't replicate, and their technology is so advanced that we can't replicate it. So they are builders. The UFO, the Jinn dive into the ocean, as is described in the Quran. They dive into the ocean. They used to dive for Solomon, but they seemingly like to do it. Why? Do they have bases there? Do they live there? I don't exactly know, but they have been described as divers, and the UFOs have been known to dive into the oceans. The Jinn shapeshift, and the UFOs shapeshift. Their inhabitants and the craft in and of themselves change shape. This has been described by many people. The Jinn masquerade as angels to human beings. For whatever reason, they might think it's funny, or they want to play a prank, or they want to misguide and mislead and to cause corruption, but they come in the form and claim to be angels. This is mentioned in the Quran. It's also mentioned that these UFOs come down and behave and act like and dress like what is the Hollywood version of an angel and what it would look like. The Jinn tend to give off a feminine spirit. It's mentioned in the Quran that they try to put themselves out as feminine deities, but in reality, they're actually rebellious devils masquerading as these feminine deities. The UFOs, as we know with Bledsoe, it's mentioned that he believes that he has been contacted by a feminine deity. Jinn inspire invention. The Jinn are known to cause people to not only come up with new discoveries and inventions and discover new materials and how to new processes of material. This has been mentioned historically. Many of the alchemists of old from among the Muslims have mentioned that they learnt new processes and how to single out certain compounds when they're doing their chemistry, because the plant itself spoke to them, and they openly admitted that they believe it was a shaitan, a devil, speaking through the plant to guide them towards how to process this material. Not only that, they also inspire new beliefs. They love to invent new understandings and new stories for mankind. That's why we have people today thinking that the UFOs are really our creators who took monkeys, genetically modified them, and created mankind from them. So the Jinn inspire invention and inspire false stories. UFO inhabitants inspire invention, and they inspire new stories and made up tales. Jinn are ancient. They predate mankind. People have said that ufology, particularly in ufology, there seems to be some indication that these creatures are very old and have been affecting us for a long time. Even though the modern wave, the modern ufology wave, is that only around 80 years old, but evidence suggests that they've been manipulating and visiting mankind for much, much longer than that. Jinn used to build things in the past. It's mentioned in the Quran that if you traverse the earth, you will see the previous nations of men and jinn that used to exist. So there is Jinn archaeology. The UFO have a mark of archaeology among mankind. There are pictures in Hindu temples in Peru, in temples in China, that show that these creatures used to fly around in similar crafts as we kind of see today, and they have a prevalence in archaeology. Jinn are plasma beings made from fire, as we discussed already, brother. But these UFOs seemingly always seem to be a ball of flaming light or plasma light. They give off flame type light. This has been described by Bob Lazar. This has been described by many people. These are balls of orbs of light, and they have, in fact, by the British government, been declared as advanced plasmas of an unknown origin. In the Condine report of, based in early 2000s, by an unknown scientist who was employed by the British government to get to the bottom of the UFOs. So he called them plasmas. Other people have called them plasmas, and the Muslims in our book, the Quran, they are described as plasmas. We're nearly there, boys. Yeah, I'm just going to go through a couple more, and then we're going to be done, inshallah. And then we can go to reaction and open up the channel to get anybody on who wants to discuss this thing. Jinn claim knowledge of the unseen. So they do make the claim that they have knowledge of things to come. They tend to tell their mediums and the psychics and the clairvoyants from among mankind this information. They try to say, yeah, look, we know what's coming, we know the future, and they present this information to them as truth. The UFO inhabitants do the exact same thing. They claim to have knowledge of the future. They claim to give visions and prophetic visions to people of what's going to happen next. Unfortunately, half the time or more, none of it happens, and it's false information. Yeah. So we have in our history, the Jinn claim this information, and the UFOs claim that information. The next one, Jinn claim lineage with God. In our book, they claim to be the progeny of God and the progeny of deities, and the UFO inhabitants have told them that they are Hathor, they are gods, deities of old. Yeah, and that there seems to be a lineage with mankind, and some people of mankind are from the lineage of them. This is mentioned in the Quran too. This is also mentioned in the prophetic traditions, that the Jinn and human hybrids is a real thing. This is mentioned in our books, and this is also mentioned that the UFO inhabitants, especially by Donald Trump recently, as we're going to discuss shortly, there seems to be some link to alien hybridization program by what they call the tall whites. Yeah. We're going to get into this. If it's true or not, God knows. But we have a historic claim that they have a lineage with mankind. The Jinn travel through space. It's mentioned in the Quran that they travel up through the heavens and into different heavens. So we have a multiverse theory here on planet Earth that's quite popular among people, and it doesn't contradict Islam. In fact, it seems to indicate that Islamic theology is correct when it says that God created 7 heavens and 7 earths, and what is in between them, so that which connects the 7 heavens and 7 earths. Therefore, the Jinn is like the UFO in that it is able to traverse the different aspects of the heavens and earth, and the UFO seemingly is a multi-medium travel vehicle that can travel through space, through aerospace, and through the sea. As we discussed earlier, they can dive into the oceans. The Jinn tend to listen and climb up into the clouds. Why? To listen into the information that the angels are discussing. UFOs have been accused, especially recently, of using clouds to mask themselves and hide themselves from view from among mankind. The Jinn come and go, as mentioned in the prophetic tradition. The Jinn, they come and they go. So there are waves and spates of times where the Jinn are more prevalent on Earth, and there'll be long periods of time where they're not around. This is also been indicated by UFO researchers like Jacques Vallée, who says that there seems to be an area of time where they're very busy and they're very noticeable and they're flying around. And then there's times of quietness when they're not so active. So just like the Jinn, UFOs come and go over different periods of time. The Jinn have a contract with a certain group of mankind. They have selected a particular group of elites as their representatives. They've brought them close to themselves, and they've created some occult religion out of this, where this group of human beings listen and obey to the Jinn and do what they tell them. Whistleblowers have said that there is a group of human beings who have contracts with these UFO phenomena, and they hide it from the rest of us, and that it's a beneficial mutual relationship. This is exactly as described in the Quran, when it's a beneficial relationship between them and the Jinn, and this is what's mentioned by the whistleblowers, that the UFO inhabitants have a contract with particularly America and other Western nations. Jinn have written script. We know that the Jinn have a book, and that particular knowledge in that book, that script that they have, gives them an ability to fly around very quickly, right? So we know the Jinn have written script. UFOs have been known, and what's been crashed and found, they have a script written on them. So we too have historical information that jinn have a written script, and UFOs have a written script. Jinn magicians, jinn have been accused of having magicians, people who listen to them and do amazing feats of supernatural capabilities. UFOs have given people, as claimed by Uri Geller, supernatural capabilities like a magician would have. Last point I'm going to make, the jinn make promises. This is mentioned in our books, that they will promise to do things for mankind. They promise to give you special favor. They promise to bring you close to them, and they also make promises about the hereafter. They say, don't worry, we're going to look after you. And these devil worshippers think that they're going to have some special place in hell next to the devil and relaxing and enjoying themselves, like there's some sort of reward. This is what's mentioned in the Quran. They make these promises and they break these promises. The inhabitants of the UFO have made promises to people like Bledsoe of events to come, and this is going to happen, and we're going to save you. There were cults in the 1950s who were promised that a UFO was going to come. It was hiding behind the moon, and if you drink this poison, and you will be collected by the UFOs and saved. The promises they make don't come true, and the jinn, when they promise things, it doesn't come true. And that's the last point I wanted to mention. I know we mentioned quite a few there, but this is the foundation of our belief. Why we're so happy to discuss and want to bring this forward to everyone, because the more you learn about ufology, the more points of contact, this is what I call them, more points of contact you see between the jinn phenomena and the UFO phenomena. And it just strengthens our position. So that's why we really need to collect more data and hear more people's stories, so that we can then check them against this sort of checklist of information to see if it matches or coincides with what we know about the jinn. And I'd say 99% of the time it does, because we have such a vast amount of information about the jinn available to us in order to cross-reference between these stories. And lo and behold, they always match. Why? Because most of the time it seems that if what you say is true, it matches with the jinn. So sorry boys, I know I hijacked the whole thing.
No, brilliant, bro.
I think,
Absolutely
Farouk,
brilliant.
there's one thing. I think that there's many people who've been studying this topic for years and years, and are very, very knowledgeable on this particular topic. And I think that Islam provides, if this was a jigsaw puzzle, it truly provides the final few pieces for those people. If they have sincerity, it completes the picture, provides all the answers. It's just that final thing that they need to have that eureka moment, inshallah.
Absolutely.
I hope we can be that for them. Like, there's many people, as you mentioned, who've had strange things happen to them, and they're trying to normalize it and tell the people around them who haven't had these experiences these things are real. And they don't know that their Lord not only told them that these things are real and that these things truly did happen to you, but he also gives you a point of understanding and contextualization around that. Why did they do it to you? What is the objective here? What and where does this lead to in life? Why did you have this strange thing happen to you, and what benefit can you take from it? And there is a great amount of benefit in Islam that contextualizes these events, one, and two, grounds you, gives you a foundational point to build your life from. It sometimes is very lonely to have strange things happen to you because no one else can relate to them. But Allah, your Lord, he gives you a point not only to relate to them, but to guide you thereby, to show you what you're meant to do with this information and how it can lead you to the ultimate wonderland, paradise, Al-Jannah, the gardens, the rivers, the shopping centers that you can't imagine. The entirety of all of this boils down to one thing. The shayateen, the devils from the jinn, are trying to take you away from your homeland. Because we, the human race, we're not from here. We have this delusional perception sometimes that we are earthlings. We've even called ourselves that. Hey, earthlings. We are not earthlings. We do not belong here. If we did, our creation would suit the environment that we're in. But it doesn't. Because we're not from here and we're not meant to stay here. We have a finite amount of time on earth, and that is willed by the one above all else. And then you'll be taken out of here, and you will be given a new creation, just like you were given a creation first time as a baby growing in the womb of your mother. You'll be given a new creation, and you'll be told to enter the final abode, your homeland, paradise, which is where you're from. This is why you have that ache in your heart, or you'll go to hellfire, which is why you have that innate worry that when things go wrong, you immediately turn to God. Even atheists do, because we do not want to go to the bad place. We don't want to go to hellfire. These are real places that exist, just like this iteration of existence exists, and you're here for a finite amount of time. You don't have no memory of life before, or even life as a child for that matter. But you are here for a little bit of time, and that's going to be taken away from you, and you're going to go somewhere else, and you're going to be, that new existence is going to be forced on you, just the same way that this life was forced on you without you ever having any choice in the matter. So these experiences you have, the reason why we have so much information on Quran and in Islam is so that you can find a way back to your Lord and back to your homeland, so you can get home. This is the way home.
Thanks, Farouk. That was brilliant, bro. And that list was excellent that you shared it in that way. That's exactly what I was looking for. You know, that you shared a very clear and concise comparative between the Jinn and the UFO phenomenon. Because, I mean, you listed what about how many things with it?
More than 2 dozen.
Yeah, definitely more.
Yeah.
About 22, maybe more than, much more than 20.
Count
But
now,
there was a lot of points of comparison, and this is the thing. I am yet to come across an area or a specific aspect of the phenomenon which cannot be explained via the Jinn. I'm still waiting for that thing, you know, about the phenomenon that cannot be explained via the Jinn, based on the information that we have about the Jinn. And you have just listed, you know, 24
25
points of comparison.
contact.
And this is
there
what
you go. So
this is what Gordon Crichton, you know, somebody who's an immense name in this particular field, he came
Legend.
to that realization, and he did that famous paper that, you know, we should always go back to, and we should always point people to, that Gordon Crichton wrote a fantastic essay, which inshallah we'll be republishing in our first newsletter, inshallah. You know, he basically looked into this, and Imran, you've been looking into this too. You know, how much of an eye-opener Islam was to Gordon Crichton, even though we don't know if he actually accepted Islam towards the end of his life.
I don't think he,
and he
I don't think he did
receive
but
an incredible amount of negative feedback from this. You know, he faced a backlash because of this particular view that he had. And
yes.
you know, if people on such a scale can have their eyes opened by Islam, you know, it's something that's in our favor, inshallah.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, it really boils down to honesty. You know, people, if you're genuinely wanting to know about what's going on, then you have to bite the bullet. You have to swallow the bitter pill sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, Islam has been presented in and by the way, Crichton in his first publication, I think it was the 89 edition. Maybe the 89 edition was the second time he published the same article in the Flying Saucer Review. He actually, you know, spends a good amount of time in the article clarifying why Islam isn't the way it's been presented to the West, you know, before he presents the information that he's come across in Islam regarding the phenomenon. So it's a case of really just understanding what reality is and looking past those false narratives. But anyway, when you mentioned Crichton, absolutely, he wasn't a stupid man. He was a diplomat for Britain, you know, and he went across the world. Someone had memorized many languages, spent years studying the topic, you know, like you said, a leading expert in the field, editor of the Flying Saucer Review, one of the most popular magazines, and he got a lot of backlash. You know, they lost a lot of followership and readership over the years after he started talking about the Jinn. And this is the interesting thing. Yet he continued to speak about the Jinn and the phenomenon. That shows his conviction in his theory or his understanding of the topic. You know, that he had really felt he had understood what was really going on. So it's about sharing the truth for him, not about just appeasing the people. You know, so it's very important to be honest here. And most people in the UFO space today don't want to touch upon religion, don't want to address these points or these facts or even challenge them. We're presenting the open challenge here with humility and with the honest desire and intent that people understand what's really going on, not to win the debate, not to, get, bragging rights or whatever the case is. It's about getting the information to people. And we're just hoping people are honest and have the courage to deal with the information. It's like that scene in the Matrix, right? The blue pill or the red pill. Do you have the courage, and that will to accept what's actually going on, or at least acknowledge. Okay, call them what you will, but the very least you could say is that these beings within the Islamic tradition are known as the Jinn.
Yeah.
Sure, they've been known by many names across history through different cultures, by many names, and yeah, exactly. What's in a name?
But in the Quran, it calls mankind insan, right? I love when you said that. We're called insan. Most people have never heard of that word. You go to a human, you don't know what insan is.
Yeah. I even mentioned to you, bro. Most jinn, I'm sure most jinn don't even know that they're referred to as the jinn in the Quran. Right?
Arabic as well, like it's old Arabic.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's fine if you don't want to use the term. It's not a problem, but at least understand the facts here. There's just appreciate those. Yes, Tariq, you had something. Sorry, I think Khalid.
Yeah. So I was saying, mashallah, if you remember, Brother Farooq, we almost a year ago or sometime back, we had a discussion on this topic, and that time you gave me so many different points about the comparison between the Jinn and the UFO phenomena, and there is so much in common between both of them. Now you gave now this kind of more than 24 list. It's very comprehensive, alhamdulillah. But I think what is interesting is that previously when you had given me, I had created this table. If you can share the screen, maybe this can help.
Sure.
Brother Imran, if you can see this image, add the image to the stage. No, not this one.
In the Bible.
The image, the other one. Yeah. So,
here you go.
I'll have to create a new one this time, inshallah, with more than 25 of them. But this was also not fully comprehensive in terms of in the discussion we had spoke about 14-15 different points of comparison which clearly match. But in this also, maybe I think one or two we did not cover in your discussion as well. So I think I sometimes when I have to talk to someone, I use this as a reference point, because this is a very small short table that helps the kind of comparison where you see the ability to fly, telepathic communication, all of those, fire and light. And this also helps someone who's looking to this topic and wants to have a point of comparison. Maybe sometimes this helps to see how it perfectly matches to what we are seeing right now. And I really like this point that Brother Imran and Brother Farooq always mention, that if something walks like a duck, it's like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it flies like a duck, it has to be a duck. So no matter if you call it jinn or any other thing, if it matches perfectly, I mean, we are just talking about that thing.
Yeah, we're talking about beings that have been created, that live alongside us in some parallel space or dimension, that have been interacting with human beings throughout history, and they are again interacting with human beings just under the guise of extraterrestrial beings from another planet. And by the way, I want to mention this point as well. I haven't mentioned this before. We always mention that the jinn are taking on the guise of ET, these highly advanced beings, far more superior than human beings, so to subdue humanity and to utilize or use them in the way they want to. That they are doing that, but there's another part of the puzzle. The human beings that are pulling the strings, if you like, the movers and shakers of society, I believe they themselves are deliberately trying to impose this narrative upon the phenomenon, that these are alien beings from another planet and they are moving around in because a lot of words are used, and you can see the sort of psychological framing that's being done when some people, like Lou Elizondo, he does this a lot. There's an object in the sky, it's a craft. They always refer to it in a nuts and bolts way, and a lot of it's speculation. There's nothing to suggest in many cases that these things are actual craft, and they are insinuating that or enforcing that description upon what's going on, and that shapes the way people see this. So I think it's both ways. The phenomenon is taking on this appearance, and certain individuals who may be in cahoots with the phenomena are also imposing this or reinforcing this narrative. It's important to mention that. But Khalid, it'd be really good if you could do a more an updated table of this, and we can share this on the.
I'll have
but guys,
to do
I think this is a good point to segue into watching the clip that Farouk wanted to go through,
Yeah.
and then we could just break that down and then conclude by around maybe 8:20, 8:30. So it'll be good to get into that. Unless there's anything else anyone else wants to share in regards to what we're talking about right now.
Just one thing before we go into that video. Brother Farouk mentioned something very interesting, which is that human beings are not from here. We came from somewhere else. This is what the Islamic take is. But what is interesting is I'm also doing some research on this area, where there is something known as this proto myth, which many people talk about comparative mythology. And there are some branches in comparative mythology that actually talk about many cultures all over the world hinge on something like, even though the myths are different in their particulars, but there is something very common within them. They talk about some kind of a fall of man, which is very interesting. No matter which corner of the world you go, you see some kind of a fall. They call this the fall stories. Just like we have many flood stories that are common, these fall stories actually indicate to humanity or the origin of humanity. They give us some information or some insights about our origins, which is that we came from somewhere else. Many cultures talk about it. Why do many cultures talk about it which have no seemingly any contact with each other? Why is there cross-cultural similarity between this? Some people talk about this. Another thing which is very interesting, which is even more common than this part, is the formation of humankind from clay. So when we talk about the origins of humanity, I mean, why do many cultures talk about the first human was formed from clay? I think this is maybe an interesting piece of research. Maybe Brother Farouk is working on an entire series on the origins of humanity. Maybe we can highlight more on this, but I just wanted to actually add that as food for thought. And maybe now we can actually segue into the whole video, because that would also, like, having our narrative as a lens and then looking at what is going on, I think it can give us some profound insights.
Absolutely, bro. And I think I like the analogy used of the lens and the narrative, the worldview. We discussed this a lot in the last discussion we had, and it's about shifting your worldview. If you look at it from the current worldview that you may hold, you will see this and understand this in a particular way. But hopefully, this information helps you broaden your worldview, so you can start to see this from a different light. There's a question on the screen. Does anyone want to touch upon it before we move to the video?
Yeah, sure. I was actually responding to a couple of the comments. I just learned how to interact with the comments.
I'll tell you guys something.
So, Nepta, I hope I said that right, Mer. Sorry, bro. Could the Jinn build a civilization outside Earth and pretend to be aliens? This is pretty much my theory. I wouldn't say that there's any direct evidence that they've built on other planets, but there's no restrictions thereby. So from an Islamic perspective, can the Jinn traverse through space? Absolutely. They did, in fact, and they mention it in Surah Al-Jinn, which is, I think, chapter 72. I might have made a mistake there, 73 of the Quran, but they literally mention in the surah that they used to travel through the heavens. So if you were a spacefaring plasma creature that can traverse distance almost instantaneously, would you build bases on other planets? Absolutely, you would. Would you have maybe mining posts? In fact, would you abduct human beings and have them as slaves on these mining posts? Most probably, right? This is obvious, of course, speculation. We do know they abduct humans. We do know that they enslave them. It's mentioned in our traditions. Whether or not they've been taken to another planet enslaved, speculation completely. But is it possible? Absolutely. Would they then present themselves as space creatures to a modern society that's obsessed with conquering space? Absolutely. Something you mentioned many years ago, Imran, and it's always stuck with me, is that they from a historical understanding, they come to the people of the time through what they respect and love. So when it used to be that the human beings respected the holy man who could do feats of supernatural capabilities, like we love the prophets because of the miracles they perform, but other humans wanted this capability. So the Jinn came and offered them this. They offered the super Sufis, we want to call them, not the traditional real Sufis, but the super Sufis, who were able to do feats of supernatural capabilities of flying around, performing Hajj on flying donkeys and such, which is written in our books. these were people who had been offered this capability by the jinn. In exchange for this was worship and was misguidance, that they had to misguide their followers and do heinous acts. And their followers followed them. They saw the miraculous capabilities. They said, this guy must be close to Allah as he claims, therefore we're going to follow him. And it caused division. This division still exists to this day amongst the Muslims. And you'll find Sufi brothers out there who have been misguided and misled by these people and the stories from their tariqah of the great feats of supernatural capabilities that their scholars used to do. Now, why is it important to bring this up? We have the exact same scenario going on amongst the military intelligence. What's the right word? What do they call it? What's that secret? Like the program. That's it. This is exactly what's happening in the program. You have people in the program who have been described as being above mankind and below God and below the angels, but like in this almost superhuman level thing. Why? Because of the capabilities and things they're able to do. They're able to travel here, there, and everywhere in these crafts. So hopefully that makes sense anyway. Did I go on a bit too much there?
No.
Everyone's got quiet.
So one thing, what is interesting when you spoke about our brother Imran's view, which was a brilliant point of understanding how they actually offer something which people are opting for.
Yeah.
I found something very similar. Astrophysicist Hugh Gross also independently says something very similar to what brother Imran's insight is. He says that he sees, when reading to the whole UFO phenomena, he says that he has seen how these beings, whoever they are, they try to appear in front of in front of humans, and they try to show a bit of more of a technological advancement. So he goes and shows, reads the literature and goes decades back, when we did not we have, compared to what we have as technology now, that technology is a bit more primitive. So he says that that time the sightings were seen, the speed of the craft that they used to see was still something that we could make, which people were thought, oh yeah, this is what I want, this is possibly achievable. It was not something that is completely counterintuitive, to the point where they don't actually think of it to be something that this unachievable, to the point where he talks about how, as our technological, how we are advancing technologically, their manifestations also change, to the point where now the more we advance technologically, the more the different kind of manifestations happen, where people think, oh, now I want this thing, this ability. So their abilities also change with time. That is what he says. Now that was a very interesting thing that I thought maybe we could talk about this as well.
Mashallah. Yeah. Sorry. Should we do that another day? Should we get into that stuff?
What's that? The question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can. Yeah, it's up to you, bro. We can get into
I'm
it.
only looking at time. The reason is, I'm looking at the time now. Enough. If we go through this,
we have about 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it's Salah time as well, isn't it? So
yeah. Should we save the video for next week?
Oh yeah, actually, let's do that. Although this is hot topic right now.
Yeah, or you could. Why don't you just give us a quick a few points of thought on this clip that you've seen? I'm sure many people have seen it already.
I haven't seen it actually. It was going to be a reaction.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Okay.
For the first minute, and then I'll tell you what. We leave that then. We don't have to. It's our first little stream.
How long's the video? How long's the video?
5 minutes as well. So yeah, don't worry about it. We'll do it another time. Sorry, Khalid, if you could just summarize the question again, and then we'll attack it, bro. Sorry about that.
No. So my it wasn't a question. It was just a point that I was bringing in. I was talking about how that, how brother Imran, brings out this insight, which is very helpful. We see that, how these beings, they manifest in different civilizations with things that actually they are opting for, and things that they would want, to show a bait, in terms of when you fish, you have bait. So the bait I'm talking about, as to Hugh Gross, who's the carrot, So
Yeah.
Hugh Ross talks about this bait. He, like, he has noticed that it changes with different civilizations, and he said that if you go back in the past, the technologies that they used to show were more primitive compared to the technologies that they show now. And then
Yeah.
he says that there is clearly a development of our technologies, and with that the bait also changes. That is
Yeah.
what he
Yeah.
says, something along
SubhanAllah.
those lines. So
Yeah.
that was something I found which was really brilliant. I'm like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, and this again helps to tie into our narrative in some sense.
Yeah. You know what? There's a couple of ones actually that I haven't added to this particular list of mine, but what he's saying is true to a certain extent. What we have in that, and I've mentioned it many times, but Sheikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, and this goes with one of the comments we had. We've got a young man here, Jubair Nawaz. He said, I might be wrong, but I doubt the jinns have enough intellectual capacity to create an intelligent civilization, given we are ashraful makhluqat, ashraful makhluqat. This concept isn't actually in the Quran, but is held by some of the different schools of thought, shall we say. I wouldn't say fiqh schools of thought, but aqidah schools of thought, that we are the best of creation. And therefore, because we are the best, the jinn are substandard to us. So everything about us is better than them. So we're better builders, we're better this. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions directly in the Quran, even though that concept isn't mentioned directly in the Quran, but directly in the Quran, that Allah subdued. It wasn't Sulaiman who subdued the jinn. The Ifrit, the knowledgeable jinn, the master jinn. Yeah. And among them, those who knew the book. The jinn who knew the book. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he made them subservient to jinn. Sulaiman didn't make them subservient. Allah made them subservient, and he used them to build things that humans couldn't build at the time. Why is this important to say? Going back to the story of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and his concept of the carrot. One of the Sufi masters was given a device, and we've said this before, but it is shiny glass device over a liquid that would allow the user to see and talk to the jinn and ask them questions, and he could see his followers through it and see what they're doing, and he would tell them later on what he saw, but he wouldn't tell them he saw it through the device. He'd say, I was watching you. And they'd say, really? Say, yeah, and you were sitting down and you were milking the cow, and then you scratched behind your ear, and then you dropped the bucket or something like this, and they would know that this happened and that he must have been watching them. And that's why they used to believe these fantastical stories about the Sufi masters, because of this information that was impossible for them to know. Like, they're in the middle of their farm. How could he know what's going on? This indicates that the technology we have now was present 1,000 years ago plus, right? Which means that I think our development, not only has it been directly influenced by what they're able to do, but that they've had it for so long that this is like old technology. This is like going to someone who is in the Stone Age, yeah, and is sharing them with something from the Iron Age, right? So even though they have much more advanced technology now than we do, it could be the case that they're sharing with us old technology they had 1,000 years ago. So yeah, there is a carrot and stick, but I don't think it's concurrent in that what we are developing, they're matching and being just ahead of us. Rather, they're probably so far ahead of us, and they're just giving us something a little bit better than what we have to create that carrot scenario. And we see, just going back to a statement that's attributed to Moses, and I don't know if this is a true story, but some of the Salaf mentioned this in their books, where Moses was sitting down and he saw a flashing silvery light flying around, and as it got closer, he saw that it was the devil, and he asked the devil, what's this? And he said, it's a cloak that I used to capture the heart of the son of Adam. And I think that's what, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, I think that's what's happened in these programs, that they've seen a technology that they really want to get their hands on, and they'll do anything for it. and they will drag us into a world where you can literally mutilate your body and cut bits of it off and throw it down the bin and wear a dress and behave as something that you're actually not, all because they want to have hands on this technology. Whatever the devil tells them to do, if it says promote transgenderism and push it on your people and brainwash them into it, they will do it. I'll tell you that now. And they'll do more than that. If the devil says sacrifice a child in a big fire in the middle of a woods, they're going to do it, as has been alleged by Alex Jones when he blew the whistle on I always forget, Tariq, man, you got to jump in on this one. I always forget the name of it, where they were in the woods and they got them on video burning the child in a big fire. So yeah, but that's what they do, sacrificing children. Ben Israel fell into it. It's mentioned in their Bible. Huh? Yeah, that's it. Bohemian Grove. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. So in Bohemian Grove, they were doing it. So when you mention the idea that it's a carrot and stick and that they're misleading, I think it's their carrot is just a little bit better than the carrot that we've got. But what they actually have and what they're holding back from us is way further than just a carrot. You know, they've got what's it called? Carrot cake, bruv. And we've just got the carrot. We're not quite got the cake yet, you know.
Yeah.
So, last thing as well, someone's mentioning here about Bigfoot. Does anyone know much about that? I do love that part of it.
So before
go on.
Yeah. Before jumping into that, you remember we had a similar question on our discussion that we had, the last discussion I think that we had, where it was like, how can jinns have technology? I mean, it's like, you know, and this question I think also comes from the fact that the general interactions that we have from the jinn are basically Rakis and how they generally interact with the jinn. If you remember, we came to the conclusion, gave the example of how in humanity also there's a difference where you can go to this island, North Sentinel, and you look at human beings, they live in a very different way. Their technology is very primitive to the point where they just use tools, nothing like very primitive tools and nothing beyond that. If we were in aliens and we came to this planet and we actually only see people in the North Sentinel Island, which is a reserved area where no one's allowed to go, but let's say that we are aliens and we visit that area. If you see human beings behaving in that, you might think that, okay, all human beings are like this. But now if like, you know, for example, I'll take our spaceship and go to, let's US, I take you to New York, you'll be like, okay, oh my God. So there's a huge difference between how people in the North Sentinel Island live and how these so-called elites or rich or in a capital these people live.
Yeah,
the same can be possible for the jinn as well, where, like, you know, the kind of beings that we get in contact with probably could be just the labor class of those, and they might have their own elites which have a hold of technology and stuff like that. Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
No, yeah, I think you're bang on with that, and I love that analogy, because this is a reality that we see with our own eyes, and this also, I think it's, you know, I think it's mutual between us and the jinn kind, and that's why we have, and me and you discussed this. I think I don't want to reveal too much of, you know, the thing you're working on. May God bless you, but we just to highlight it for everybody listening now. This is why we have, I think, a difference among the iterations of the phenomena. Why some of them seem to have very powerful technologies and capabilities, and then some of them come in a crude manner where they're, you know, hanging around woods and trees and, you know, not really seemingly advanced and sophisticated as the rest of them. And also, not to be rude to Jubair, but if you're from the Indian subcontinent or from Arabian Peninsula, where for a very long time we've been, you know, let's say there's been a wider gap of technologies between the West and the East, should we say, I think that maybe localized jinn that live in them areas have a similar difference. And that's why you kind of like think maybe some areas will look at jinn as like a bit dumb, maybe low class or low IQ, naive to say one of the scholars who I spent a lot of time learning from, he had actually a very similar view. He said that he doesn't think that they're sophisticated or that intelligent. They're very naive and easy to mislead, and they tell a lot of lies, and they're not really committed to anything, right? So because of that reason, I think that, like we have different cultural ways of doing things, what we might in Britain think is backwards isn't backwards in certain countries, and what they think Britain is backwards, is what we think isn't backwards is backwards in other countries. Some countries can't imagine. You got two, Imran, mashallah, you're still logged in on another. But what we think is discussed, like, for example, we eat cheese and yogurt. A lot of countries, especially in Far East, this makes them vomit. The idea of like curdled milk, or as they view it, is disgusting. It's backwards. Who would drink such an awful thing? Yet they'll quite happily roast tarantula on the fire and yam it up, and I think understanding these subtle and sometimes huge cultural differences is important to apply the same cultural differences to another creature with a similar level of intelligence as we have. So, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. I think everyone's gone, bro. Me and you are left, Khalid.
Yes. So one question I have: what do you think about the jinn kind having their own animal kind within them?
Yeah, I think this is clear in the Quran from an Islamic perspective, particularly the hadith that mentions that the camel in particular is from the jinn, or for the jinn. It's a creation that was created for the jinn. Allah knows best. This is off the top of my head. It would be, I had it in front of me. Go on.
So why was I mentioning that is because I have one very important insight when it comes to this. So, like, dealing with Rakis, like, I had one very well-known Raki. His name is Abu Ubaid, and he was once mentioning, which was something very interesting. He said that generally those who are sahir, who perform these kind of things, when they want to affect someone, the first level that they actually affect someone with is with the animal jinn kind, and then the next level is with the jinn kind that is walking, and then maybe the third level that they have is the flying jinn kind. So now I don't know, how do I make sense of that fully, but what I get from that is basically, so they have levels within them, the jinn kind, they have levels within them, and whatever we see right now, those who try to do possess and those kind of things, which is the main point of contact we have with them, these are the kind of animal kind of the jinn, or basically the labor class of the jinn, which we were discussing one day, but then one Raki mistake, I think, kind of confirmed what we were mentioning. So I found that to be really a beautiful kind of a comparison, and understanding how that we can make sense of how we don't get generally we don't get in contact with those kind of jinns, but that does not mean that kind does not exist. Of course,
exactly.
We see some manifestation of that too.
I want to go just before we I think we're going to close up here. I don't know how we do that, by the way. You're in the so I don't know how we close it up, but I think we just leave the shooting and then stream with it. Is that how it works?
I have no idea.
I think because Imran's gone, bro. I don't know where he's gone. But I'll say this just briefly because I've only got a few minutes before Maghrib comes in. That what you're like having that confirmation makes me feel good. That we're kind of on the right track of understanding things. But I'll also add. Oh, here we go. He's back, mashallah. I think that if you were an elite jinn, consider yourself royal family or something like that, you would only want to interact with people of a similar stature as you.
Oh yeah.
So there are certain royal families and royal bloodlines, as they call them, among the shall we say the conspiratorial community. They have long suggested that the bloodlines of the royals and things like that is very important to them, so they keep it pure by inbreeding and things like this. And this is why there's some who claim to be children of God, and they this hybridization type thing, and people with certain blood and certain, you know, attributes mean that they're from that lineage and that they're important to mankind. And this would only just add more evidence to suggest that that's what goes on. It doesn't make it real that they're special or anything. It's just that that's how the jinn use it in the form of manipulation, where we're the elite ones, we're going to deal with the elite people, and you, the lowly class, you can go and muck around with them. But i.e. this group of people are off limits. Perhaps there's a group of mankind that the jinn don't bother like they do with us because they're close to the elites of the jinn, and so on and so forth. This is all heavy speculation. And
yeah, definitely.
yeah, you know what I mean? It is pure speculation. There's no evidence whatsoever, other than that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does say that those who claimed a lineage with God, those jinn who made that lie up, will face a heavy penalty for doing so. And I think that this is part of the occult, that they have this belief and idea that the jinn are gods or children of gods, and that the chosen ones from among mankind who have this hybridization, so to speak, are also special for that reason. And this is what everyone's looking for, bro. Instead of looking for Jannah and a way to get home, to fill that gap in the heart with the truth that you are the son of Adam and that you ain't from here, but you want to go home because it's a beautiful place. Instead, they fill it with these nonsensical, as we mentioned earlier, inventions of the devils, who invent these ideas and these concepts, and they mislead mankind thereby. Yeah. So I think this is what's going on. Abandon the mythology and come to the truth. And last thing about Bigfoot. Yes, there is a very clear hadith. It's called the hadith of Tamim ad-Dari. It's very famous. And Tamim, he met with a hairy creature that he called al-Jassasa, which kind of means like the assassin or the spy. And al-Jassasa, the scholars have discussed this, but the most prominent opinion is that it's a title of a jinn, yeah, or a jinn type. God knows best, whether it's a type of jinn or whether it's a title afforded to one of the jinn. But when it appeared, it came in a form of a giant hairy ape-looking creature, and its hair was so thick that you couldn't tell the back from the front, which is often how Bigfoot is looked at. It's a giant hairy creature that's so hairy, you know, you can't really tell its features. So yeah, we definitely have mythology in this, or I wouldn't call it mythology. Islam definitely confirms the possibility of a giant hairy creature lurking around in the woods because of al-Jassasa. So there we go. Anything else, Khalid, Imran? Otherwise, I'm gonna end it up here, boys. This ended up being me just knitting along. So forgive me, brothers. It was meant to be a discussion, and I just hijacked the whole thing. So
no, it was all good, bro. It's the introductory section, and those points were very important to mention. Sorry, guys, I had to jump off, but I was always listening, bro, supporting you from the back end. So let me know if you're good to finish. We can wrap up for today.
I'm good to finish. But
I think we can wrap up.
Go on. Sorry, Khalid.
No, I was saying, like, you know, I think as you mentioned, I was saying this kind of introduction is important because now we have given the lens to people. So now maybe in the next episode, of course, there's going to be some very interesting episode stuff coming out. But now people have the lens and they understand what perspective we are coming from. So I think clarifying this was important to some extent, because there'll be many people who have not had a taste of what Irep is and where we come from, what our narrative is. So now if this is clear, inshallah, maybe we can dive into the meat of things, inshallah, in the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. And like we said, we're always open to challenges and to be corrected if you believe we're wrong, to have that discussion. That's what this platform's here for, and to hear from you and to learn from everyone as well. So anything, Farouk, you want to add before we sort of close it?
No, I just had a good time. I like hearing I always hear my own voice on these things, so forgive me, boys. Yeah, man.
So good. So hopefully you guys find this beneficial. We'll be back next week. We haven't fixed the day yet, but most likely it'll be a weekend, possibly a Sunday night, evening. But we'll let you guys know when it becomes definitive. But we will have a show next week at some point. So keep posted.
It'd be nice to get some guests as well, Imran. Yeah, let's try and get someone next week. We can have a guest on.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely scour the Twitter spaces and see if we can find someone that would like to.
I've got a lad in mind. He's a non-Muslim guy, but I'd love to have him on. We spoke to him before. Old John Luke Infinity, very well-researched young man, mashallah. So yeah, we'll do it inshallah next week. Thank you everyone. May Allah bless you all. Khalid, thanks bro. You honestly, if it weren't for you here, it would just be me talking. So barakallahu feek, man.
Assalamu alaikum.
Perfect, guys. Take care.
I'm gonna leave. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.